I'd like to call the next special guest up, which is Martin Sklar.
Just a couple of things before I give you a couple of tidbits. First, when I started in the engineering field, networking meant you were connecting a couple of circuit components together. Had nothing to do with that. But ironically, networking is about connecting. So first thing I would just mention is enjoy the moment when you go out and meet people and you're networking. Don't be scared. Everybody's got the same wants. They want to succeed. They want to meet new people. So I think enjoying the moment is something that people don't mention. I think that just be at ease. The second thing, though, is that connection I just mentioned about networking in the electrical sense is true here, too. When you meet somebody, ask them how you can help them, as we said before. And I think what's critical is that when the meeting's over, when you go home tonight and you met people, reconnect with them online and ask them what their needs are. You may know somebody, obviously, who can help them. And I think that's probably the most powerful part of networking that all of you can provide, is that when you help someone else get networked to a new job or whatever the case may be, you're going to feel good about it, and it's going to come back multiple times for you. So that's the key thing I think we'll leave with tonight, and hopefully get the panel going and enjoy the networking. Take care.
Okay, so we're going to start. You can hear us, okay, over here? Great. We're going to start with Maggie, and she's going to give us her career story.
So my story is not going to be as moving as Lisa's. I mean, Lisa's is very personal, very dramatic reason why she loves medical devices, and I love medical devices too. But my entry is maybe more prosaic, more down to earth. I did not intend to get into medical devices. I was in the computer industry many years ago, and I went to business school. I was at a startup company, and I went to business school, and at business school you do an internship between your first and your second year. And I thought that I would just choose a company that I really admired. I wouldn't even care what they made necessarily, but I really wanted a company's culture that I thought I would really enjoy. And so I chose Hewlett-Packard Medical Products Group, and there are a couple people who made the same choice at some point in their career. Because HP, it's changed a lot over the years, but it was famous for its culture, its sort of business approach, management by walking around and valuing every person. And it also had outstanding talent, and Gail, you're one of those people who's here that represents that. And that meant that as somebody in the marketing area, you were going to be able to work with fantastic products that the R&D folks were developing, and that was just an unbelievably great opportunity. So I went there for a summer, and then after graduation, they offered me a job to come join them full-time, and that's what I did. And so I spent about 10 years there, between marketing and then doing mergers and acquisitions and strategy near the end. And but I was really dying to go back to startups, and so I did spend the next 10 years at small companies, and loved that. It was really exciting, very turbulent, lots of ups and downs. And then 5 years ago joined another very large company, Thermo Fisher Scientific. And technically we're not a medical device company, which is why I didn't raise my hand when you asked about M&A, but we're a life sciences tools company. And the reason why they're different, there's a lot of reasons, but one of them is that we don't go for 510K and PMA approval for our devices. Thank God. We are lucky. We create instrumentation for scientists to use in the lab. 80% of it is, and the other 20% is more conventional medical devices. So those are not cleared by the FDA in the same way that medical devices are. So right now I lead strategy, mergers and acquisitions, and marketing for one of our divisions that does clinical trial services. So we do all the logistics for clinical trials. Over-encapsulation of blinding of medical pharmaceuticals. We do packaging, we do labeling, we do cold chain, we do distribution, we do logistics globally. So it's a fairly large division, and I've been in this division for about 1 year. So I'll turn it over to Christina now. I mean, I guess that's what we want to do, and let each one of us do an introduction. I hope I didn't go on too long.
No. Great. Hi, everybody. My name is Christina Demore. My background's in biomedical engineering. I graduated from BU right here, Boston. I was a transfer student, so I was looking for a job until I was going to start graduate school. And and I ended up working at Brigham and Women's Hospital in the operating room as an anesthesia technician. And then through a variety of interesting events, one of my professors became head of biomedical engineering for the Brigham. So my first 10 years, I spent those years at two of the teaching hospitals in Boston, so Brigham, and then moved to Tufts New England Medical Center. Super enjoyed that, and really, developed a passion for healthcare and really the clinicians and how to make clinicians' life easier, and really understanding the life of the nurses, the surgeon, and in particular the anesthesiologist. I survived Y2K. And decided that after 10 years it was time for a new adventure, and really wanted to go to work at a med device company. I was surprised that people would come to us at teaching hospital and say, hey, would you look at my new widget? Would you look at my new software? Would you look at my new instrument? And we would, put it through its paces. And I thought, what kind of crazy people are at these companies that we're still seeing these problems and not having solutions? So I thought I need to go over to the dark side and go to the med device manufacturer. So I joined Siemens Electromedical Group. They had a patient monitoring division up in Danvers that entered into a joint venture with Draeger Medical, which of course does anesthesia machines, ventilators, but they also did patient monitoring. And I really enjoyed that. I was there for about 15 years, with the last 6 years as VP of R&D. I parted ways with them in 2015 and took a year and a half off to try this thing called consulting, to see how that went, and I really enjoyed that. I loved working and mentoring some of the startups here. Lisa gave a great introduction of how rich the health tech and med tech environment is here. But at the end of May, I decided that it was time to go back to a big company, and I joined GE Healthcare. And I'm GM of the cardiology IT group. So those of you who know cardiology, you might go for a stress test or an ultrasound test or a procedure in the EP lab. And the cardiology IT group is responsible for bringing together the IT backbone that's managing the enterprise imaging, the workflow solution, and the administrative tools. And I'm enjoying that challenge, and I'm only 3 months into it. So that's all my story.
Thank you, Christina. And Darcy?
So let me start off by saying I've wanted to do something medical my entire life. Ever since I was little, I was watching surgical shows. I was watching how the brain was taken apart, how the inside the body works. It was my whole dream to be in medical. And eventually decided I wanted to be a dermatologist. And the selective criteria to become a dermatologist is extremely nitpicky, so I decided I needed to have a degree that was very specialized before I went on to med school. My great-grandfather was going to be a surgeon, and right in his last year of surgical residency, he was hit by a train and paralyzed his hand. Stuck like this, he had to learn how to be left-handed in his late 20s, and that left a strong impact on me. So I decided to go to Worcester Polytech, WPI right here, and study biomedical engineering with a concentration in biomechanics, because if I couldn't make it to med school, I'd at least be able to get into the prosthetics, orthotics type of industry. So I got into college and realized that, 4 years was about it for me. And I was not going to go further, nor did I have the money. And due to my situation, I didn't have co-ops. I didn't have internships. I had nothing but, door-to-door sales or retail or type of data entry in my background. So as I went into the job fair market looking for a position, I did not enter in medical industry, which broke my heart. So I concentrated more on how I could start building my way back there, and ended up with a chemical company. Every little thing in this world is based on chemicals, all the way from the ground up. Every single device that you touch has chemicals within it. So as I started selling waxes and additives, first of all, engineering was not my strong forte. I couldn't see myself sitting behind a desk all day long. My very senior year, I met Lisa Sasso at a networking event, which is what this is all about. And she opened my eyes to the technical sales industry and lifestyle, and it sparked my interest. I love to talk to people, I love to meet new things, and I kind of like to know a little bit about everything. It's a good way to be a jack of all trades and still have a concentration. So I was selling waxes and pigments and additives into lots of different industries, coatings, paints, special additives, detergents, and then eventually got into plastics. I became a key account manager. I was traveling all over the all over the United States, and was handling global key accounts, and was pregnant with my third child. And decided at that point I probably needed to close my territory a little bit. It's a little hard when you've got 3 ones that are under 4. So I ended up moving over to my sister company, Clariant Master Batches, and they gave me only the eastern half of New England, and during that time I finally broke into the medical device industry. I work with major OEMs to help them do color and functional additives for all of their devices, because let me tell you, devices sell based on the way they look, the way they feel, and their functionality. It's a key component. So I've been slowly working my way back into the industry that I love. But it takes a lot of time, and it takes baby steps sometimes, and it takes a lot of networking.
Excellent. Okay, now I'd like to call Art Coombs up to the microphone. He has something to say about a great time to be in the medical device industry, in effect.
Hi, everybody. I think it is a pretty great time to be in the medical device industry. I'm a physician by training, and I have gone through the transition from physician to the medical world to the medical device industry, and then from a Fortune 500 company into the startup world. So I have experienced a lot of the transitions that are being described to you, and I sort of feel your pain, but at the same time I feel your excitement. The thing that I think is really interesting right now, I'm not talking about my transition, I'm talking more about the opportunity. We hear a lot about healthcare reform. The truth of the matter is that's a problem I don't know if anybody will ever solve, but it's never been a more exciting time to be in medical technology. Never. Never. As of this past May, I've been a physician for 42 years. I saw the first CAT scanner, I saw the first MRI, I saw the first ACE inhibitors, I saw the first open heart surgery, I saw all this stuff. We would never have dreamed, when I was a young physician in training, of what there is today. Second point I want to make really quick, this whole idea of the Internet of Things. The Internet of Things, in my opinion, and my complete and utter bias, is the Internet of medical things. That's where the magic is, that's where the critical mass is, that's where the unmet need is, that's where the amazing things are. When I was at Nelcorp here in Bennett, we had the #1 ventilator on planet Earth, with all due respect to Siemens. It had given 1 billion hours of life support. And do you know what we knew about how physicians used it? Nothing. Zero. We didn't know which button they pushed more than any other button. The Internet of Things is not only going to improve business, so you understand how physicians, nurses, technicians, etc. use your products, but it's also going to bring back information. Continuous information. Big information, information that can be parsed by more powerful things than any individual physician. I could talk all night, I promise I won't. It's a great time to be in medical device, and if you're really into the Internet of Things, this is your moment. Thank you.
Okay, this is, if you didn't already say this, which I didn't hear, what was your major in college and your first job out of school, since there's a lot of people that are making their first transition?
I went to WPI. I was a biomedical engineer with a concentration in biomechanical engineer, and my very first job was technical sales for waxes. It was a great fit. Well, let me tell you, I know just about every type of wax that'll make your products work the way that you need to work.
I graduated from biomedical engineering from Boston University, and my first job was a anesthesia technician in the OR, the cardiac ORs at the Brigham.
So do you see how they told you their background, how it was so related to what their first job was? My undergraduate career was as far away from medical devices and business. It was English literature. I never took a science course if I didn't have to. I never took a business course ever. So for me to get into business even, never mind medical devices, was a long walk. But I did go to, one of the best ways to do that is a startup. It was not a medical device startup. It was a computer startup that was making add-in memory boards for computers, and at the time a very big, sort of storage like EMC, but it never was the scale of EMC. So it was just a complete parachute over into something I had no knowledge of. But luckily, I think I'm very curious and willing to learn and dig in. So my background did not prepare me at all. My undergraduate background did not prepare me. Then I got an MBA, which did prepare me. So
Excellent. Thank you. And I'd like to call up Bobby Carlton, founder of Innovation Women, to join us at the mic.
So I have a broadcasting degree, not medical device. So I am the founder of Innovation Women, which is a speakers bureau for entrepreneurial and technical women. And the goal is to get more women speaking at conferences and events. And quite frankly, I will tell you that the best thing that you can do for your career is to get very, very comfortable with public speaking. Getting yourself on stage connects you with what we call the 4 C's. The first one of those is customers. You're going to be talking and telling your story to customers. The second one is connections overall, connections to partners, to industry analysts. Perhaps you're also going to be connected to cash, funding. If you are an entrepreneur, you want to get funding and being on stage telling an audience that might consist of, say, investors. That is a good thing for you. And you also get credibility. You stand up here and somebody in the audience is going, they got vetted. Somebody thinks they're awesome and somebody thinks they know something. So get comfortable with being on stage.
Great. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to start with Darcy for this next question. What is life like when you get into the medical device industry?
It takes forever to get things done. Absolutely forever. So being in technical sales, I deal a lot with the engineers at OEMs, and even sometimes they're molders. A lot of times OEMs develop the product and they say, hey, you know what? You figure out the color and how it grips, and these are your parameters. But when you go into the nitty-gritty of the medical device, not only do you have to work with all of these different levels of people, but you have to make sure that you've got products that fit every little regulatory demand on the face of the planet, and they grow with all those regulatory demands. So it takes time, and it's very, very long-lived, but also very rewarding. There have been projects that I've worked on for, they've been decades long. I start halfway through and I see them right to jump off and be successful, only to land on their face as a complete failure. So it's an interesting market, but it's really fun to be a part of it. But regulatory takes forever, and you'll never get away from it. Lots of paperwork.
so true.
Okay. Christina?
Let's see, I would say that, rephrase the question one more time, Maria, Lisa.
What is life like when you get into medical device industry?
I think Art said it. It's exciting. I think you're really trying to solve problems. I think I'm an engineer, and engineers want to solve a problem and fix it. So I think it's trying to how to balance what Darcy was saying. If it takes so long, to how to balance and bring that with somebody wanting a solution. So you have to be creative. You have to be patient, but it's also really exciting.
And I'd say that it's very disciplined because of the regulatory, and at first that can be it can be kind of frustrating if you've been in another field where you can develop some code and put it out there, and now you learn that you have to do kind of testing at many points and data collection and submission. It can seem very frustrating, but I think one thing that I've noticed from being at companies that did not have a good quality and regulatory system and then put one in is that it actually made the development process much better. Everybody hated it when they first started these sessions training us on these systems because it seemed to be not innovative. But I think no matter what you're developing, if you don't have a process for checking to verify that you're actually, meeting some spec and validate that you're actually meeting a customer's need, you end up with a lot of risk. And that may not be true for, web changes and things that you can do, but that's a very easy come, easy go segment. We're in a longer term segment, and people will work on something for a long time. I remember when I was first leading a group of product managers, they would compete to be on the product that was going to launch sometime in the next 1 or 2 years because they didn't want to wait and work on things that were, far, far, far away unless they loved the early work. And they didn't necessarily want to work on things that were already launched. So there was that sense of being part of the launch, which usually is such an exciting and risky period. So I think it's very disciplined. It can take a long time, but it's a very rewarding field to be in, and it teaches you kind of an approach to projects and products that I think is very valuable beyond medical devices. So.
Excellent. Thank you. Now I'd like to call Eric Ross, who's going to tell us the 5 critical job search networking insights.
You've all heard many times this evening already about networking. Well, why must you network if you're looking for a new job or to transfer into a field like medical device? Reason 1, it is the most productive way to access the hidden job market. Well, why do you want to do that? Most of the jobs that are found by job seekers are in the hidden job market. The second reason is it's almost essential when you are changing either your function or your industry. It's absolutely essential, or at least very close to that. Okay, that's 2 of 5. What is networking in reality? Well, you've heard it again over and over and over. Best definition I know of is it is starting the beginning of new professional relationships. And the key word there is relationship. And that leads to the last 2 insights. What are the keys to networking success? When you are networking, your objective and your focus absolutely has to be on relationship, not employment. Employment will follow if you focus on relationships. And networking is much, much more than going to events like this one and working in the room. Oh, that's where a lot of networking starts. Focus also on having each new relationship lead to others. 5 insights.
Thank you. Okay, now we're going to start with Christina. How did you transition into medical, or how did you get your first job? Like, how did it happen?
In industry? Or
Yes, in industry.
In industry. So as I said, I survived Y2K, and I decided I needed a new adventure, and I thought it would be fun to work for a device manufacturer. I gave myself a year to network and to explore the market and to figure that out. And I didn't know that I was networking, but I think I was networking because I went to the AMI conference, AAMI conference, and I heard somebody speaking, and she talked about a Siemens anesthesia machine. And I approached her after the conference, and we were talking about it, and I was asking her about her machine, and she suggested that I reach out to somebody at the Siemens facility near Boston. And so that was sort of, but I didn't know that that was called networking. I thought it was just talking to an interesting speaker at a conference. So,
Networking.
now I realize it's networking.
Okay. Maggie, how about you?
I already told my story about first getting into the field, and it was through like a conventional business school situation, so that might not apply to a lot of people. So it might be more interesting to think about a transition later. And it's definitely true that networking is where you find people. You hear about opportunities. It can take a really long time before the people you meet are in a position where they know of an opening, but it is very, very useful. I would only, the 5 points that you just shared were great, but I would only change it a little bit, because I think now I feel like when people want to network with me, it helps me so much if they have kind of thought through where they think I can be helpful. So, for example, somebody might look on LinkedIn and see that I know somebody that they want to meet, or I might have worked at a company where they want to go. And so maybe just because I travel a ton and I don't have time to sit down face to face with people nearly as much as I wish I could, I find that it really helps when people say, there's something I want to ask you about, that they've done some homework and they've thought about it, and hopefully I can help them, because then I feel good. I can help them, and it certainly has helped me. And I think one thing that I did in transitioning, I told Lisa this over the lunch, was I did a bunch of homework on companies in Massachusetts that I thought were really interesting, and I knew, I went online and did research and listened to their earnings calls and all that, so that when I would meet with people, I would say, here are the companies I'm interested in. And they might not be working at one of those companies, but they would know someone who had, or they used to work there, and it would be a conversation, and it showed that I had actually done some work before I got there. I'm not saying it's easy, but if you can do that, then it just helps people kind of frame out where they can help you. So I did that through a couple of different job searches, because I have moved jobs a number of times, and sometimes that's how it helped, and other times it was just a friend of a friend. So.
Darcy?
My transition was long. It took 7 years. As I said, I did not start out in medical devices. In technical sales, fresh out of college, I did a lot of the grunt work. I was given the most awful accounts. I was given the smallest territory. And in the course of 5 years, I grew that territory from $2 million to $5 million, and that's when they started to give me some of the larger accounts. And they introduced me into the plastics realm, which is a very small community overall, and gave me some key accounts. As I started working in the plastics industry, I started going to a lot of the different career events or job events, things like REACH. I got involved with a lot of different SBE events and things like that, and created a very large network, grew another $2 million of new business, and created a name for myself within my company. That allowed me to transition to the master batch division, which was kind of filtering through a lot of the aging reps, and because I had reputability of growing a territory, and my degree being biomechanical engineering, biomedical engineering, they took my skill set of working with the crappiest of the crummiest companies and providing success, and gave me the opportunity to help build the medical sales in plastics. And that is, it took me a long time to get there, and I actually used Lisa as a coach because as I always wanted to be in the medical device industry, I was not in waxes and in pigments. And she helped me kind of outline the steps that I needed to take in order to get to the next level. So sometimes using a coach is really worth it to help organize your own thought and career process. And sometimes it is baby steps, and it is making sure that you make a name for yourself. And again, it's a lot about networking, making sure people know who you are, know what you're good at, and just continue to travel in that same pathway till you get where you are, which is finally medical devices.
Excellent. Thank you. The next person I'm going to call up to the special mic is Arnie Feinberg, who's a senior project engineer at Vascular Insights, and he's going to talk to us about attention to detail. Welcome.
Hi, everybody. Welcome. I made the jump from commercial engineering into medical device engineering, and you can take that, your expertise, and do the same. I used a lot of sources. The standard ones, Monster, Career Builder, specialty sites, and Craigslist. I ended up getting my job through a recruiter, a temping recruiter. And I started off with a small company. I started off with a larger company, and then transitioned myself into a smaller company. But what I'd like to say is some of the key things, having been out of work and also had the privilege to hire people, I'd like to bring your attention to what you should have on your resume, and you should pay particular attention to detail. Focus your resume on the skills that the hiring manager is asking for. Look at the ad, find out what the manager wants through the recruiter. Every skill should detail your path through your skills. I'm a mechanical engineer. If I put something on there that says, I designed something from napkin sketches to the final product, that doesn't say a lot. I designed it through using SolidWorks. I designed it through using design for manufacturability. You can add all those acronyms. Use your acronyms. Let them know what you want. I recently was working on hiring someone, and trying to find out what their actual knowledge was very difficult. They just had generalized descriptions. Next thing I'd like to do is talk to you about solving the hiring manager's problems. Find out what they are. If you don't know what they are, ask them. Articulate how you solved a similar problem, or how you detail how you would solve the problem. In any case, good luck to everybody. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to start with Maggie. What transferable traits or characteristics did you bring from an old job into your medical device position?
Definitely curiosity. So I've always loved to learn, and there was a lot for me to learn. I already told you that I didn't know business, and I didn't know medical, and I didn't know electrical engineering or medical, any kind of engineering really. So I came into Hewlett-Packard, and was doing marketing work for cardiac ultrasound machines, and there's a lot to learn, right? You work with the engineers as to try and understand how the next generation of product will be developed, and I didn't know how to do that. I didn't know engineers, actually. I didn't have any in my family, so it was a whole new thing there. And I think working with clinicians, I had been a patient on the other side of the table, a clinician, but I hadn't spent time with doctors understanding how they did their work and what they would need to improve. And there was just a lot to learn, and I think it took some real, honestly, like buckling down and persevering. And I've changed fields many times, from different kinds of devices, different kinds of clinical conditions, from cardiology to interventional cardiology, to diabetes, to drug delivery technologies, to implantable osteoporosis therapy, to pharmaceuticals now, where I work with companies that are producing new chemical entities or new molecular entities. And I actually love that. I just love, it's horrible at the beginning because you plunge in and you really don't know much and it can't be useful. But to me, being on the sharp part of that learning curve is what I love to do. So I've deliberately chosen to move companies, to move sectors, and to move in different roles, functional roles, all within a sort of a group of things that I really love to do. So I've been very deliberate about that, and frankly, after about 2 or 3 years, I'm ready for the next challenge at the same company or at a different company. And that's kind of how I've taken that curiosity and I guess tenacity to not give up when it's something that can be pretty complicated.
Great. Excellent. We'll go to Darcy and then to Christina.
So I married an engineer. I am essentially supposed to be an engineer, but I'm obviously sales. And one of the things that I realized is engineers hate salespeople. They hate to talk to them. They hate to work with them. They're bubbly. They're annoying. They're in your face. They call you all the time. And engineers just they don't like that. So the biggest trait that I transferred over was the fact that I did go through engineering school. I was surrounded by engineers. I know how their brains work. I know that they need facts and they need evidence. They need help and support to fix the problem. They don't need bubbly and chit-chatty. They need help with their problem. And it's been a matter of learning how to talk with each type of individual, whether it be engineers or whether it be marketing, who do like bubbly, touchy-feely. So learning how to bridge the gap between talking to an engineer versus an executive versus a marketing or another salesperson was one of the greatest qualities that I've been able to transfer over. Learning how to talk to your audience is extremely important, especially in the job hunt. If you're talking to an executive, it's a much different conversation than when you're talking to an engineer. And always keep that in mind, that you're constantly needing to connect with a specific type of person. So make sure you use not only your knowledge and your personality, but bring forward those traits as well. It works for chemicals and it works for medical.
Is every engineer like sort of leaning back in their seat, hoping that?
I get a lot of the, hi, I'm
There's a lot of
Darcy.
them
I get
here
a lot
tonight.
Hello. Like, trust me, I'm not gonna bark down your door. You know, obviously you have a problem. Let me help you with it. Oh, okay, all right.
Christina?
I said that I spent 10 years in two teaching hospitals, and that really had a profound impact on me, and really understanding that the technology that we work really hard to design and develop and commercialize is really about solving a problem for a clinician or delivering care to a patient. So I would say what I brought to my time at Draeger and what I tried to work with the engineering teams about was really realizing that no matter how fantastic your technology and your idea and your design is, it really has to work for the user. And so that idea of user-centered design, user experience, usability testing, and really realizing that you can still be a great engineer and you can have designed something that's awesome, but it has to be simple for people to use, simple for them to understand and to work it into their environment and into their workflow. So I would say sort of two of those traits are listening and sharing what you listen, and then the user-centered design piece.
Okay. And now I'm going to call Regina out to the microphone. She's new product planning strategic commercial consultant in our company's biomarketing insight.
Hi everyone. You just heard in terms of people coming from different industries. I came from the pharmaceutical biotech industry to get into medical device, and I would say you would think it would be easy, right? Because I'm already in medical. Well, it wasn't. In the industry, when I transitioned over, people were very highly specialized in terms of pharma is pharma, biotech is biotech, medical device is medical device, and if you were in medical device, you couldn't do pharma, or you couldn't, or vice versa. And what I would like to say in terms of from a marketing point of perspective, and even from a sales perspective, that the skills are definitely transferable. And the reason I say that is because, again, it is medical. You're dealing with the various diseases. You are dealing with the same stakeholders, the physicians, the patients, the hospitals, regulatory, in terms of reimbursement. And yes, they are very different because the products are different. The regulatory is different, but it's basically the same thing. If you want to transition, say, from medical device to pharmaceutical or biotech or vice versa, you can use your skills in terms of really helping the company. What you really need to demonstrate is that you understand the industry that you want to transfer into. So if you want to go from pharmaceuticals into medical device, yes, it's very different because the regulatory is very different. The reimbursement may be a little bit different, but the process is all about the process. The process is very similar whether you're from biotech, pharmaceutical, biotech, medical device, and diagnostics. And I've been in all four. And they're all the same in terms of the marketing and sales with the processes. The products are different, but the processes are the same. Now, that's not to say that, say, if you're a biologist and you want to get into medical devices, that's impossible because you think, okay, biology is biology and engineering is different. I think right now it's probably the best time in terms of switching industries because if you look at what the industry is going through, you have combination products, which is biology with engineering. You look at medical devices and where they're going in terms of software, in terms of AI. Now you're including people who are in analytics because with the big data. you're including people in terms of computer science, which you really didn't think about. I mean, devices are probably a little bit easier in terms of switching over, but everything, I mean, when you think about devices and how it started, pure medical device was not a medical device. You had semiconductors, you had sensors, which goes into industrial engineering. So the lines are blurring for all the medical in terms of pharma, biotech, diagnostics, in terms of healthcare. Even healthcare is the same way because there's a lot of software in it. But in terms of actually developing the product, you have all different types of disciplines. Right now, people in terms of the medical devices are using people from gaming because they're finding that the skills that gaming has can solve some of the problems. So again, right now it's really, I wouldn't say easy, but I would say a lot easier than when I tried to transition into the rest of the companies. I mean, in terms of transitioning over to the 4 different industries in medical. And when you think about it in terms of therapeutic area is the same whether you're in pharma, biotech, medical device, and diagnostics. It's just that the products are different. So it's a great time right now. Thank you.
I'm going to start with Maggie. What or who was helpful in your search?
I think I probably didn't get the memo on mentoring because, I think it would have been a great idea. And I always had kind of a do-it-yourself mentality, and I felt like I could just go and learn something. And I mean, it's not really 100% true, but I would sort of say, well, I can't really ask that person for help because I don't want to feel like I need help. So I would go off and try and learn things. That probably was not the right way to do it. There's times when I could sit down with an engineer and they could say, here's what you need to know, and explain it. And maybe I didn't do that enough. So I think I would recommend that people look for mentors, but I think of it much more now at my company at Thermo Fisher. I'm a mentor to some people, but with their reverse mentoring relationships and all kinds of horizontal mentoring relationships, so that it's not about Maggie giving people wisdom or some person coming to me wanting my wisdom, because they know a lot of things about social media, they know a lot about how millennials are working, and it's kind of a two-way direction. I'm much more comfortable with that than I am either going to someone to try and have them explicitly help me because I didn't really want to ask for help, or having someone come to me and expecting a certain kind of mentoring. I just think it's much more of a give and take. So I wouldn't say I've had specific mentors in the traditional sense of it, but I would say that being really curious would mean that I was fairly humble and not expecting that I knew it all, and in asking people specific questions about specific things. I probably wish I had done it more, but there is a limit to how much you can, pick someone's brain when they're needing to be productive as well. So I think I would go back and do it again. I probably would look for more traditional mentoring, but I'm just not sure it was part of my sort of DNA and approach to it.
Christina?
When I left Draeger, I had been there for 15 years. I took a year off, as I said, to try some consulting. When I decided to go back to work and start back at looking for a job, I didn't recognize what we've heard tonight, which is that the world has changed since I had last looked for a job, and it really now is about networking and about knowing somebody who can help you. I'm a good student. I think engineers in general like to study. We like to learn. So I read a lot, and 2 books or two comments about books come to mind. One was, if you want to change jobs or get a different job, meet 100 people face-to-face that you didn't know. And I had no idea just how hard that would be. You take everybody you know, so everybody who you've met here tonight, and we don't count. You have to start a new list. And curiously, in my journey, I actually met some of the people here in our special guest row, which was great. So that's it. So meet 100 people, and I will tell you that when I accepted my offer with GE, I was at number 98. So I was a good geek engineer. I was keeping track of all my phone calls and emails, and had a great master spreadsheet. And so that was one. And the other was really how to be strategic about your networking. So people always tell you, you have to network, you have to network. Okay, what does that mean? How do I network? What do you ask somebody? So you go to coffee, and how do you do that? Or you're going to get together with somebody. So really trying to figure out, and Lisa mentioned sort of the value statement, but really honing what's your pitch. So what are you asking? A lot of these people are busy. Time, it's a challenge to get on their calendar. So how do you really come up with a compelling value proposition of what you want to ask them and what you may be able to provide to them? So I would say do a lot of reading.
I was, again, very far away from medical. I wanted to get closer. And if you wanted to know about every single industry that made car polish, I knew exactly who they were. If you wanted to know every single industry that made detergents or cleaners, I knew every single one of them. But when it came to the medical device world, I knew the large companies, and that was it. And I tried and tried to get into them, and I just hit a brick wall. So I reconnected with Lisa, and that's just when she started doing her coaching, and she kind of took me through as I believe one of her first few pupils, if you will, and kind of had to re-understand what my pathway had to be. So one of the things that I did was I joined MDG. I haven't been an active member for a little while, but that's because I have 4 kids under the age of 8. It takes a little bit of time. But what I did was I joined MGD. I also took the National Association of Medical Sales Rep course so that I could get certification, and that allowed me access to hundreds and hundreds of unknown job opportunities that were only offered to people that had this certification. So it opened up my avenues of looking for positions and looking for jobs, and found out all the different journals and all the different locations that I could look to finally find what type of companies I'd be interested in working for. And because I was pregnant with my 3rd and eventually had a 4th, working with my sister company in plastics to just grow my knowledge in the chemical field and the plastics field into medical was really the best thing for me. So it was the coaching, the MDG, and then actually learning the speak of the medical industry.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Okay, we're coming down to like the final questions. So what is the biggest piece of advice that you would give someone interested in getting into the field? And as you think about that, I'm going to ask Jack from 3D Printing Program Manager, Johnson & Johnson. He's going to tell us a quick story, and I'll let you guys think about that.
So my advice would be, you got to tell a story. I bet 99% of the people here today are going to remember Lisa's story, right? It was powerful, it was compelling. That's what they're going to remember. People don't want to hear you recite a story, that recite your resume. They want to hear a story. That's the name of the game, I think. So what does that mean? I think you have to start with the value statement that you mentioned. You have to have a brand. You have to represent something that people want. And you have to make sure that they understand it. And the only way they can understand it is through a compelling story. So what does that mean? That means you got to do some self-evaluation. I'm an engineer, and my wife is a psychologist. What is that economy, right? And I've been in therapy for 40 years, and eventually I had to marry her because I'm just kidding. But what she did tell me is that it's very important to understand who you are. So there's a lot of tools out there. Companies have these 360s, have people, your peer reviews, to tell you what they think of you, right? There's nothing wrong with that. It's tough to hear some of the negative things, but it's really important for you to understand who you are. There's also books on emotional intelligence. There's no right or wrong answers. You just got to know who you are and how you come across with people. So there's a book, Emotional Intelligence 2.0. It's a great book. I suggest that you do read it and figure out who you are. One of the things that I think was really helpful for me to develop my story was that I had 2 companies ask me to put a presentation together. One company in particular, I had to speak to 13 people in the organization. They flew flew me out to Chicago. I had to give a panel discussion story on leadership, what I bring to the company, my value proposition to their customers, etc. So it was a big presentation that I had to put together. I had to make it clever. I put some mathematical models, as an engineer, on what I believe in leadership, etc. And I used that presentation to tell my story in other areas, right? I didn't get the job with this company, even though I put in a lot of effort, but I took that presentation along with me. Another company asked me the same thing. I learned again about myself. I didn't get the job either, but I got to be able to tell a story to people. Eventually I did get a job at Johnson & Johnson in 3DP. So the reason why I bring that up is, now that you do all of this research about who you are, you have your value proposition, you brand yourself, I was really involved in the Internet of Things. I mean, I was really passionate about that, and I really wanted to get involved in that. Well, I'm not in the Internet of Things, I'm in 3D printing. So I guess my lesson there is, not only do you need a story, but you need to also understand how to pivot that story, and that'll help you, get into the areas that you want to get into, but also open your mind up to other opportunities out there. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, now we gave them adequate time to think about what their biggest piece of advice that they would give someone interested in getting into the field. And we'll start with Darcy.
So whether you're marketing or engineering or scientist or physician or any other job on the face of the planet, you are selling yourself every single time you step into a room. Whether you're at a function, whether you're at an event, whether you're in a lobby of a company, whether you're handing out a resume, every single moment that somebody else sees you is your first impression, and you don't get to take that back ever. When you're at one of these events or when you're out networking, you need to be on your game 100% of the time, because if somebody notices that you are a wallflower, or you're nervous, or you're doing this, that, or the other thing, that's an immediate judgment. So first and foremost, remember that you're selling yourself 100% of the time. And the other thing is make sure you familiarize yourself with the industry. If you go in trying to find a job in the medical device and you know nothing about medical devices, you know nothing about the major companies, you know nothing about the minor companies, you've got no backbone, you've got no background, you've got nothing to help promote yourself to whoever it is that you're trying to hire you. So make sure you know the industry, know where you're trying to go, and always be professional, because somebody's always watching you.
Great. Christina?
Come to terms with the fact that finding a job now in 2017 and onward is a networking-based proposition. So I know engineers in general, we lean towards the introverted side of the equation, but find a way to be comfortable networking and getting yourself out there. As Darcy said, you're constantly representing yourself, but you have to be out there. The idea that somebody's just magically looking for the world's best engineer, EE, and going to call you, I think those days are gone. So it's all about networking and making connections and building relationships.
I'd say that you should actually try something else. I mean, seem to be you're laser focused on medical devices, but none of us started out in medical devices, right? And here we are. And in fact, after about 10 years in medical devices, I thought to myself, I want to see what else is out there. And I switched into an IT company, healthcare IT, for a couple of years, because it was just a good thing to try something different. So I don't think it's true that it's different from other industries, and it is different from pharmaceuticals for sure. But I think that nowadays there is more fluidity, and as someone said, there's more convergence. I don't think it has to all be laser focused on, I'm going to be at one of these medical device companies. There's a lot more understanding that doing other things that are related or that build your skills is a very good thing to do. Some of the very best engineers at Hewlett-Packard when I joined had not started in medical devices. They had started at Raytheon developing missile systems or whatever they were developing, and then they moved into medtech because they had a skill and they knew they could apply it to another field. So I wouldn't be so tunnel focused that it has to be medtech, and I'll never get into it if I don't start there or if I don't go to my next job there. I think there really is more flexibility, and it's just good to learn different environments and try them out.
Excellent. Now I'd like to call up to the speaker Kevin Pelletier. He's a sales and marketing manager at Mass Material Research, Inc. in West Boylston. He's also an adjunct professor at Community College in Worcester, and he's going to talk to us about breaking the ice during networking. It all kind of is flowing.
Thanks, Lisa. So, you've heard people say you have to get comfortable networking. Well, how do you do that? It's not that easy. I think it was Bobby that said you have to get comfortable public speaking. How do you do that? The way to do that is to practice and to do more of it. So I have breaking the ice during networking. The who, what, when, where, why, and how of networking. So if you remember those words, it's easy enough to start a conversation with somebody. You have two options. You can talk about yourself, or you can get them to talk about themselves. Some people are more comfortable talking about themselves. So once you meet that person that you know that they're comfortable about talking about themselves, you start in with the, hi, how are you? What do you do? Who do you know? Why are you here? So if you remember who, what, when, where, and why, that'll give you ways to start conversations with people and to get them to talk about themselves. If you're uncomfortable with that, then somebody mentioned an elevator speech or an elevator pitch. Use those same words to develop your own who, what, when, where, why, and how. And then you can talk to people comfortably with your own speech and your own pitch. So there's two sides to every coin. Either get them to talk about themselves or you talk about yourself. There's two groups I would highly recommend in order to help you to do that. One of them obviously is the MDG. Premier networking group. The first meeting I ever came to, Marty Sklar grabbed me by the arm, took me up to somebody and introduced me to somebody. I've done that a number of times at these meetings, but paying it forward. Marty set the bar for me. The other thing I would recommend is Toastmasters International. If you haven't heard of it, look it up. Google it. It's a very, very helpful organization to teach you how to speak comfortably over and over and over. Thank you.
Okay, this is the question that they've been able to percolate because I didn't put it on their question cheat sheet. But what are your top 3 values and why? Because I talked about values being so important, and I really want to know what your values are. Who would like to go first?
I'll go first. I think I've already said them along the way, right? So curiosity for sure, perseverance, and the other one is just collegiality. I want to work with people I like to work with, and that has driven some choices in my career. Maybe away from some things and towards other things, and I think I've been fortunate, but it's really about that curiosity, perseverance, and then just collegiality.
Mm-hmm. Christina?
Teamwork, empathy, and fun.
Gosh, I like to talk so much, I don't know how to sum it down into 3 words. Communication skills. So communication is a huge value of mine. I like to open people up and figure what they're all about. Out-of-the-box thinking. I wish I had a tiny word to describe that. And plain curiosity. Like Maggie, I like to solve problems. And I like to help you solve problems, so it's my drive.
Excellent. Excellent. And I'd like to call none other than Dick O'Brien, the founder and chief development officer of Nego Hale Partners. He does marketing and business development, and he's going to share with us.
I wanted to 3 things. One, I want to tell you more about MDG membership. The second thing I want to do is tell you why I have enjoyed and feel I've benefited from membership. And the third thing is I want to tell you why you should. And the first one I have to borrow from Paul Hartung, who gave us the invitation to be members, and from you, my friend Jack, the story. So I was volunteering for MDG, and I got an assignment to go out and see the largest medical device company we have in the region, maybe in the Marlborough area, senior officer, and ask him how he might help MDG. And I had a very collegial meeting with the gentleman, and we talked back and forth, and finally he said to me, you know, I really think MDG is all about jobs. And he said, I really don't want my people going to MDG to look for jobs, you know? And I laughed, and I didn't really laugh, but I chuckled because I knew that's a common understanding. You know, we're all looking for jobs. If I had a better job tomorrow, I'd take it, you know, or at least I'd look at it and I'd understand why it'd help me or why it would build, you know, I'm looking to improve myself. And so that's what I tried to explain to him, was that if he sends us talented people, we give them a chance to, say, speak to groups, or to manage projects, or to learn and find colleagues that could be helpful in his work, and so on. And so we had a great conversation, and it was a very positive thing. But I think that's the way to begin to look at MDG from the holistic point of view. We are a family, in a sense. We want to be sharing what we have. We think this is an important industry. We believe in this thing that says saving lives. It's important. And so we want people to grow. We want people to be talented. We want colleagues that we appreciate being with. As one of our speakers said, you know, it's important and it's fun to be with people that you really do enjoy working with and that you find are helping you to grow. So for me, I came here as a consumer packaged goods marketer with a client. The client expressed some interest in trying to choose a market. When I looked at the talents and the things that he wanted to do, I said, geez, I think that's a medical device thing. You know, we should go find out. So I made an appointment and came to an MDG meeting. We sat together in the audience, and he immediately leaped up and volunteered to do the next program. And I turned around and I found all these people who were contributing to the concept and the understanding and the idea that I didn't even know anything about. And so I decided, I've got to get an education here. And so I started to come to MDG meetings, and that's what I got a free MBA on top of my own MBA, I think, in understanding life sciences. It was so important to me because I was really a marketer. I didn't know this industry. And my previous experience had been in other technical industries and certainly in the consumer products world, but not here. So I found this so valuable. That was 15 years ago. I'm still here. The third thing I'd like to point out is I think you need to be a member of this organization. We need you and you need us. This organization is right now numerically the largest organization in the industry. We're bigger than Massmedic. We're bigger than whatever, the other organization. And it's just not just about numbers. We're different. We are individuals. We're not companies. We're people who are trying to grow. We're trying to develop our careers. We're trying to find and learn what will help us to be making a contribution, the kind of contribution that we want to make. If you're earnest and you're here and you're interested in doing the little extra steps, this is the place to network, to learn, to get the advice, to find the partners, to see the trends, to understand the business more successfully, no matter where you work and no matter how you do it. Thank you.
Now I'm going to call Jerry Shapiro up, and he has a special surprise for us. He's the one and only special guest that has a visual aid. So for a moment, you're going to see something different than the slides that have been going through, and he'll explain his
People up in the booth will change the slide. Okay.
And I want you in the audience to be thinking of a question that you might want to ask the panel, either a specific person or the whole panel. But be thinking of a couple of questions, because I've exhausted all of my questions to them today, and they've done a dang good job of it.
Okay, I wanted to speak to you about a very difficult challenge when you're in the job search. The job search process is very much like the sales process. The difference is that you're selling you. And it's hard to separate the product who's you from the person who's you. So if we look at the sales process, the person who is selling is your used car salesman. And having done a year of sales training, I know that there's a stereotype of the guy with the gold chains and the slimy reputation. And we all think, well, that's what salesmen do. I can't be like that. But you can be who you are, a medical device professional. Now, when they're selling a car, the product is pretty obvious. But when you're selling you, what's the product? So what I encourage people to do is to think of you as not you personally, but as a product, the U box. And that product has certain features that you sell. It has certain marketing collaterals that you sell. It's not you, it's you in a box. Psychologically, that makes it easier for you to sell yourself to a prospective employer. So if it's a car, then the features and benefits are right on the sticker. It's pretty clear what the benefits are. But if it's you, then it's your resume, it's your networking sheet, it's who you contact, it's your story. So what I'm encouraging you to do is to think of you as a product and sell that product with the marketing collaterals you would use to sell anything else. That's it.
Thank you. Okay, who has the first question for the panel? Or for a specific person?
Somebody up there. She's up.
Okay, come on down. Never thought I got to be Bob Barker for the night. You're the next contestant on MDG is Right.
Hi, this is for Maggie and for the fellow who told us that we should make our resume specific. I'm a generalist, I'm a physicist. I want to transition into this industry. My strong point, or one of my strong points, is that I can learn a new area quickly. But that's hard to sell specifically. So.
Yeah, I think it's true that some of the best skills are not ones that are, and I think some of those transferable skills are not a particular like coding technology that you know, or I mean, maybe that's true that would catch someone's attention, especially if they're filtering online, and I think that's too bad, because when a machine is filtering your resume, you know, it's going to find, you know, a peg that will fit into another peg, and that just doesn't ever work for me. So I'm glad that there's other things like networking, right? But I think that when you don't fit into a little peg like that, and when it requires the other person to do work, or the hiring manager to do work, then the job is to make it easier for that person. So if you're, like I said before, if you're networking, and I think I owe you a phone call, Jim, then like, if you can, come to me with something that maybe I could help you with. What's hard is sometimes people want to brainstorm in general, and I'm happy to do that, but at the end of the call, they probably will be no better off than they would be at the beginning of the call, because I don't know what it is that you can do, and I don't know where your skills could be plugged in. So if there's anything you can do that can help kind of close the gap between a networking person who might want to help you and where you are and your goals, it's just too hard for, you know, the person who you're talking to is busy to fill that whole gap. If you can come part of the way, it's good. So I think that, you know, resumes, they're unnecessary evil. You have to have one. And if you go through the filtering online, you know, you do get calls for specific things that are keywords that are pulled out. But I don't think that's a substitute for the really high quality roles where it's going to be about somebody understanding your capabilities in a broader way and having the imagination to do that. So sometimes that's why the person before said it's the hidden job market, because by the time they've taken their needs, which are very vast and kind of gooey, and like reduced it down to a job spec, it's a lot harder to come in with your skills that are sort of also matching their needs in unexpected ways. When it's down at a particular job spec, then they're going to fill that square peg with a square hole with a square peg, right? Whereas if you're finding people earlier on and you've given them a hook for what you can do, enough of a hook, then it will work out, but it will take time. So that's the challenge, is it's not a job posting, so it's not a job. It's a need, but it's not a job. But if you wait till it's posting, then you're really competing against keyword search people. And so I know that sounds frustrating because you're going to do a lot of conversations with people who don't have a need that you fill, and you're going to have to kind of help bridge the gap for a lot of people. But it's the reality of finding things before they get reduced to a set of skills that's very, very narrow. Sure.
All right. Yeah. Yes. Come on. Sure.
Hi, Elizabeth Rosenzweig from Bentley University, a Human Factors and Information Design program, and my question's for Christina. Particularly, we do some human factors in design.
Great.
User experience for medical devices, but we want to do more. I know it needs to be done, so how would you suggest, it's a different kind of transition, but like getting more of that work, particularly I think formative testing in the beginning? I'd like to hear your thoughts on that.
So again, it's advertising yourself, the brand, making connections. And I think in your particular case, it's when I was on the engineering side, it's hard for me to answer that phone call. It's hard for you to get to my phone. So I would say, how do you get to me? And that's really where the networking events can come, where you're really advertising what you can do. I think the other way is through, we were a big proponent of intern program, and looking, our human factors team and some of the other groups, looking at some of the local colleges for interns. So having them sort of be a walking brand and advertisement for the work that you can do. Yeah.
Excellent. I'm going to call up Maria Shepard, president of MediVantage. She's going to talk about passion for the medical device industry.
Hi, everybody. Before I talk about passion in the medical device industry, I also wanted to talk about networking, which is what we're all here about, and what must come afterwards, which is relationship building. So I know 3 of the women on this panel pretty well. I met Lisa when I got promoted out of my job, and she took my job at Bard. I met Maggie when I interviewed with her for a product manager job. That's got to be 15 years ago. And we've kept in touch. Lisa and I have also kept in touch. I met Christina when she started her consulting business. We met for coffee, and she talked to me about that. We've kept in touch. Darcy, I don't know how you slipped away, but we'll get in touch. So you have to build relationships, and just do that, you have to start by networking. So here's my top 3 reasons that I'm in the medical device industry and that I feel like I can thrive and survive. First of all, I love improving patient outcomes. We work on some of the most challenging medical problems that medical device companies have about new markets, new businesses, and how to get a product to market without having it fall flat on its face once you commercialize it. This happens all the time in the medical device industry, and it's an ugly thing. So when we can improve patient outcomes and help get a product to market, that's fantastic. Also, we are a resource to be able to help reduce the cost of healthcare here in the United States. We spend more on healthcare here in the United States than any other country in the world, except maybe Japan. And so a lot of the passion that we have in the medical device space is around improving outcomes and reducing costs for the healthcare industry. But the third, and probably the most important reason that I love and I feel like I thrive and survive in medical devices is because I get to wear my clinician wannabe hat. So Art's not here right now, but I've worked with him before. He's a physician, and he told me I was a physician wannabe. He's a doctor. I wanted to be a doctor. I'm not one. But I get to pick the brains of doctors and hospital administrators on a regular basis. And if you want to be successful in medical devices, That's what you need to do also. So you have to be able to reach across the table and develop relationships with doctors and find out what they need in order to be successful. You've got to be passionate about that, because otherwise it's just probably not all that interesting. So thank you.
Well, if you can believe it, we've gone through all the speaker questions and all the special guest preparations. So now, if there's any last final questions, and one thing that I also wanted to ask you, if you have those yellow sheets, those are extremely helpful to us for gaining feedback and for doing things even better next year. We used this last year, and this was helpful. And if you look down at the bottom, number 5 is, do you want motivational messages? Anybody here tonight, and I'm making this offer because my book didn't come in, but anybody here tonight, if they check off that and they get my monthly motivational messages, I will find a way to get you an electronic copy of my book. And you don't have to pay for it. Granted, you can go back to my booth. We're taking sign-ups for it, and I will have the book for next month. But and tonight the book is $10. It's $5 off for anybody in attendance tonight, and then 50% of that goes to Children's Hospital. So, and I'm also going to try something that I'm not the most technically adept person, but if you want, there's another way you can get the monthly motivational messages or the book. You can type on your phone the numbers 444999. If you type 444999, and then you put the word messages in, MESSAGES. You have to do the S because somebody else has the word message. But if you do messages, you'll get a prompt and you can sign up that way. I suggest you do it both ways. That way, at least I'll find you and we'll be in contact, and I can offer any services or help to you who might need it. But so I'm seeing happy people tonight. Yes.
I very much appreciate the 4 of you for being here. I've long believed that we can change the world if we educate all the young girls in the world. I think within 20 years, we would have a different planet, a different way of being. So my question is, how can we speed up the process?
So how do we get more girls?
Get more women like you in power faster.
Well, I think it's a long slog. And I think sometimes it seems like we're not making progress, yet I meet a lot of women who now have grown up with the expectation that they will continue to succeed, and I hope that I've raised my daughter that way and try to help young people who are coming up, men and women, but certainly women who have an aspiration to continue learning and growing. So,
is there anything that you've seen in your lifetime that had an impact on you, this is for all the panelists, that gave you more courage as a woman to not only boldly go forward in your own dreams, but to support other women? And is there anything that men and women can understand from your experiences so we can together have more women helping us transform the world?
I have a quick story that I can share. When a few years back, I was in Stanford setting up my equipment for a procedure, talking to the doctors, and a gentleman came up to me and said, "Oh, you do that so well. You're really good in sales, and we should have dinner." And he was from another company, and I actually know his boss, but he had no idea who I was. And I remember handing him my card, and it was the ultimate feeling of empowerment, because he started shaking his hand because he saw President and CEO of Rowdy Medical Systems, and he goes, "I didn't know you're that girl." So I've never been referred to as Marla Thomas before. But that was my way of seeing how guys saw me. I must be a technical person, or I must be a technician or a nurse or an assistant or something. They would never see a president doing what I was doing. But we were really small in the beginning. And I was one woman covering the country before I started hiring sales reps. So what we need to do is give back and do things for women. That's why I joined things like HBA and West and other organizations that are primarily women-oriented. And that's why there's a big shift in MDG to try to address more women, and it's beautiful looking out here. I can't even tell you I think there's more women here tonight than men, which is quite a shock from there. It used to be 90-10, and I was in that 10% 12, 15 years ago, and now to see this group here tonight, it's very impressive.
So I have a quick story. When I was a kid, I came up. I lived in Florida, and I came up to the Science Museum, the Boston Science Museum, and it was a sort of life-changing visit for me. So I think giving people experiences like that. I mean, I went on to be a volunteer in the Human Body Connection for 20 years there, and I think it really sort of set me on my way of wanting to be a part of the scientific community and the science community and education.
So I have 4 girls, 8, 6, 4, and 3. So I'm definitely sensitive to this topic. When I went to school at WPI, it was 1 girl out of every 7 guys. Right now, I believe it's 4 girls for every 7 guys. So it's already growing rapidly. A lot more people are getting engaged, a lot more women are getting engaged, and I think it's because there is this push for STEM. There's also a lot of different opportunities to do hands-on and basically spirit building. Like you can go to Home Depot and your daughters or your sons can learn how to build something, learn how they can be useful, versus just sitting in front of a TV and learning how to shoot guns on a video game, So it's really about engaging all of your children to make sure that they feel that empowerment and know that they can do something, and that grows into full-blown curiosity. But it is growing.
Thank you very much. Can I make announcements of opportunities for engineers?
We're actually, could we put that together? Because
sure.
You might have some things, there's different recruiting companies that say that they have positions as well, and maybe that might be something good to get out to people.
Now, there's 2 of them. I have 2 clients, Draper and BD Medical, so I just called them, and BD Medical is hiring engineers. It's going to be posted on their website in 2 weeks, so that's bd.com. And the other is Draper. They have something called Engineering Opportunities. That's at 555 Technology Square. I see some nodding heads. That's the 4th through the 7th of October. My name is Rob Kanzer, and just wanted to share that.
Yeah, that's fine. Okay, now for all of you who put your names in the raffle, could I have, did everybody have a chance to put it in? I can tell you the epilogue now, because I told you everything that happened to him, but what I didn't tell you is now he's a strapping 10-year-old, and he does swimming, singing, dancing, drama, basketball, and Boy Scouts. And this is it. Mark Parent.
Does anybody know?
Mark Parent. He's the first winner. That's okay, we'll hold the book. This is to get an actual real hard copy of the book.